Welcome to Open for Business Mentorship Series, where the City of Charlotte brings critical information to our small businesses. I'm Mayor Vi Lyles. As our city began the first phase of reopening over the weekend, we've been getting a lot of questions about how restaurants, retailers, and offices can safely open their doors again. Today we have 5 panelists joining us that are experts in their respective industries. We'll discuss best practices about reopening for our small business community. So this afternoon on the panel we have Gibbie Harris. All of us are very familiar with Gibbie. She's been on television, I think, every day since the 1st of March. She is the Public Health Director for Mecklenburg County, and as Public Health Director, she manages public and environmental health for our entire county. We are joined by Fred Whitfield, President and Vice Chair of the Charlotte Hornets. He's on our panel today representing the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council and will share insights on what companies big and small are doing as the city reopens. And then the most fun, I'm really glad to meet over the internet Subrina and Greg Collier, who are the husband and wife team behind Uptown Yolk and the new restaurant Leah and Louise in Camp North End. Over the past few weeks, they've been pivoting their operating models and having a new business opening during a pandemic. But they've continued to give back to this community that they call home. And we have Chad Turner, who runs Ready CLT, an evolution of Support CLT that was created to provide support and sustainability for Charlotte small businesses. Ready CLT is the next iteration that will provide resources for small businesses that are reopening. Chad is the proud president of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. At the end of our discussion with our panelists, we'll open it up to you for questions. If you're watching one of our city social channels, you can ask your question using the comment feature. If you're watching from the Gov channel, please email your questions to, and this is a very long to, Charlotte Supports, with an S, small business at charlottenc.gov. Charlotte Supports small business at charlottenc.gov. I'm going to open with the person that has led us, as I always said, with grace, dignity, and resolution. Gibbie Harris, our Public Health Director. Gibbie, I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit about the phased reopening plan for Mecklenburg County and North Carolina, and talk about what's important for small businesses to know as they open to their customers and they open for their own employees. Gibbie?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity to have conversation with our businesses. So we're in the process of going through several different phases that have been outlined by our governor. And I think everybody is aware that phase 1 went into effect at 5 o'clock this past Friday afternoon. The things to know about phase 1, and that's the phase that we have the most information about at this point, is that the stay-at-home order remains in place. There have been modifications to that order, but we are still encouraging people to spend as much time at home as possible as we start going through these phases. Obviously, commercial activity has increased. Retail has been allowed to open at 50% capacity, but there are some expectations around social distancing and cleaning. People can travel to those retail businesses at this point. Gatherings are still at 10 person limits. Childcare has opened up for those working, which is a good thing. We're still encouraging teleworking, if at all possible, for individuals that can remain at home. Our bars and restaurants are takeout and delivery only at this point. And most of the personal care and gyms, playgrounds, and our movie theaters are all still closed in phase one. And we continue to have real concerns about those in our community who are most at risk. So we are encouraging the elderly, those with chronic conditions, to remain at home as much as possible to decrease any chances of exposure since they are more at risk. I will state that, the county did reopen vehicular travel in all of the parks. So they are available now, and the state has opened all of the state parks. And we are encouraging face coverings at any time you're in the community, especially if social distancing isn't an option. Obviously, phase 2 and phase 3 open up more options for our community, but we are still awaiting some specific guidance from the state on those 2 phases at this point. Phase 1 is scheduled for 2 weeks, so we should know a little bit more about phase 2 next week as the governor pushes some more information out for us.
Gibbie, that's really great. I think that people are just uncertain. I was wondering if you could talk about the stay at home and what impact it made to allow us to get to even phase 1.
So staying at home and social distancing has made a big difference in our community. If we looked at the initial projections of the number of cases, as well as the impact on our healthcare system of people needing care, we have been able to, you've heard, flattening the curve. We've been able to slow down the number of cases that we're seeing on a daily basis, which is important for a number of different reasons. Number one, it decreases the potential for exposure in the community. But the main reason is it has allowed our hospital systems to be able to provide adequate care for those who need to be hospitalized without being overwhelmed. So we've actually done a very nice job of that in Mecklenburg County and a fairly good job of that in the state. And we will continue to encourage people to social distance, to stay at home when you can, because it protects all of our community, including those, and especially those who are most vulnerable to this virus.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to go to Fred Whitfield. Fred, I know that you are leading a task force for the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council for the reopening strategies for Charlotte's office areas and our office businesses. But I think most people want to know first what and who is the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council, and tell us about this task force and their work and what's the critical information that you're dealing with as you help advise people on this decision.
First of all, thanks, Mayor, for including me in today's webinar. And before I get into that, I just wanted to thank you, Mayor, and City Manager Marcus Jones and his team, and our City Council, and County Manager Dina DiOrio, and obviously County Health Director Gibbie Harris, and the County Commissioners. Our local government leadership is second to none, and we appreciate all your hard work in this effort. The Charlotte Executive Leadership Council is a group of 24 CEOs and 2 college presidents across our region, again, made up of all type businesses, and we've been meeting for the last 2.5 to 3 years, really focused on some things in our community that we felt needed to be addressed, like workforce development, economic mobility, having a closer working relationship with our governmental leaders, you, Mayor, and City Council, and and also our county manager and county commissioners. And as this pandemic came about, we felt that we should, as an organization, and this Executive Leadership Council is chaired by Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America, and Andrea Smith, who's the Chief Administrative Officer there, certainly helps him lead that. We felt like we needed to really find a way to try and work together and help to put together some protocols and best practices that businesses could think about as they look to go back to the workplace, go back into their respective offices. And I was honored to be asked to really help lead our internal subcommittee, primarily because I have been working very closely with the NBA and our business continuity task force and looking across all 30 teams within our league and trying to develop safe ways that we could get back into our offices out as well. And so we have put our people first and their health, safety, and well-being as a primary thing that we all were looking for. Also thinking about our partners and our community at large and our neighbors. And then also how we protect our brand, our reputation, and our community. And I think that's the same type things that we were looking at as the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council. And so we reached out to, as the Hornets reached out to some of our business partners, Novant Health, EY, Bank of America, Grant Thornton, to name a few, to look to see what type protocols and procedures they were thinking about bringing their employees back to work with. And then we really aggregated them with our business intelligence unit at the Hornets to put together a 6-page survey that we have shared with all the businesses that are part of the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council. You know, obviously, you know, we want this to get wide and be shared amongst our community. So we have passed that along to the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance and Janet LaBar and her team to go wide with all 16 counties and the businesses that they serve, because this is an all hands on deck as we approach this pandemic and try to get past it. And this has nothing to do with the sense of ownership or authorship. It's just a way that we can all pull together a community and try to come out of this thing together. And so, you know, we've tried as much as we could as a leadership council to share those ideas. We're happy, Mayor, to share our survey with the city so that you can go even more broadly with them. But the survey is really built around having people think about things that Gibbie has mentioned, what social distancing should look like in the workplace, what cleaning standards should be encouraged. Clearly, masking is something that we've heard from the state, we've heard from Gibbie, we've heard from everybody that helps assist in helping limit the transmission of this disease. And then what to do if someone is infected and impacted within the workplace, what protocols and procedures we as companies should take as we try and protect others within our organization and contact tracing to see who those people have come in contact with. And then last but not least, Andrea Smith co-leads a statewide group that's called our North Carolina Business Council, and that business council, which I'm very fortunate to serve on as well, with Gene Woods from Atrium and Lynn Good from Duke Energy in our community. And for the past 2.5 years, it's a bipartisan group that looks at how we can make our state better from a business perspective. But now we all are focused on this pandemic, and so we've increased people as a part of that group to look across the state at ways that we can get our businesses back to work. And we've got a subcommittee that I've been asked, fortunately, to co-chair with the gentleman that runs Biltmore Farms up in Asheville, to look at how we can share best practices amongst businesses across the state. And as we go into phase 2 and phase 3 and afterwards, how we can help advise our governor on the safest ways and protocols and procedures to be able to reopen restaurants, whether it's inside dining or outside dining, how we can open theaters, as Gibbie mentioned too, what it would take to increase the limits on mass gatherings, and how we get back to some form of business in the hospitality, entertainment, and mass gathering sector. But again, as I mentioned, we're just playing a small part in this. We want to do everything we can to help amplify the message and be a great partner, not only in our community, but across the state. But anything we can do to share things that we're learning and finding out as we move through this, we certainly want to be able to share that with our community and have those in our community be able to get back to business safely and get our economy back on.
So I'm not sure, are the survey results complete now, or are they still are you still gathering information?
We're still gathering information from an MBA perspective. We sent out the survey on Monday once it was completed, and we are expecting results on Friday. We're going to aggregate this and disseminate those. What we are offering our CELC members to do is to have those surveys distributed amongst their companies, their respective companies, as they look at, protocols and procedures to put in place. But it's really more of a guideline of things to make sure that you think about as you start to put your strategy together to reopen. And we hope that these companies will use them internally and be able to aggregate the data internally and then put together best practices for their companies. And we're also hoping, again, that the Alliance can distribute it to even small companies out in the community that may not have access or may not be thinking about some of these very critical things that need to be considered, and hope that the survey will be more of a guide for them to make sure they aren't missing anything that's important.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. Now we're
Sure. Thank you,
going
ma'am.
to talk about, we'll have the survey, and hopefully Subrina and Greg, as owners of one of the best restaurants in our community, you own and operate the Yolk and Leah and Louise restaurants here in Charlotte, and you did this while we had a stay-at-home order in place. I think that all of us recognize that the restaurant industry and the hotel industries are hit hard, entertainment hit hard, but yet you still had the opening during the stay-at-home order. So tell us about how you made that decision, and how's it going? How are you transitioning with a new restaurant and a fully established one?
First, I want to say hi, everyone. Hi, Mayor Lyles. Thank y'all for having us. And to answer your question, we had to adjust like that fast. So with us being in Uptown, Yolk, and 7th Street Market, that's a public market. We had to change that to curbside, cut down days, and we essentially turned our regular Monday through Friday business into a charity kitchen. So we do charity breakfast for an organization called Heal Charlotte, organized by Gregory Jackson, and he goes to, what are the apartments?
Orchard Trace.
He goes to Orchard Trace
yes.
every morning, and he gives out breakfast and lunch, and they do that from our kitchen. U.S. Foods was gracious enough to give us a stipend in the beginning so we could order food and then do the food from our kitchen. We were able to keep some of our staff on to try to pay them and then also help the community. So that's a way we had to pivot for Uptown Yolk, because there was no 10 people in the building. It's a public market. If everyone even just had their employees there, we've already, broke the rules. So we found a way to just do that for a couple hours a day. Curbside brunch on some Saturdays. And then Greg, my husband, Chef Greg, he did Leah and Louise a little bit different because that is a solo standalone restaurant.
So, and then add to that, someone for Frontline Foods reached out to us, and we're actually, I want to say once, maybe twice a week, we're providing up to 130 meals for frontline workers at different hospitals. And we get paid for that as well. So that helps us directly pay our employees, because our employees have always been the focal point of our businesses. So we wanted to make sure that if they couldn't get unemployment, if they weren't able to get some of these funds that are out there, we did something to put them in a good position. So collectively we get through this thing, and not just, hey, we're business owners, we got to make sure we're
yes.
At Leah and Louise, we're actually in a meeting with Cam North and discussing our plans when the 10 order dropped. So we went from, oh yeah, we're going to take reservations Friday to, well, guess we're going to carry out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, we really didn't have a choice whether we were going to make it or not. It was just about how we were going to make it. So we started off with the regular menu carry out, and that was going real good the first week, and then it kind of slowed down. And a lot of people were requesting family meals. So now we have, and we did, in addition to the family meals, we do like lunch. So we got a few sandwiches, sides, and stuff like that. Both of those things, lunch was supposed to happen in June. Mm-hmm. The family style supper we were going to do, and that wasn't supposed to happen until September. So obviously, a lot of plans we had for later in the season had to start immediately. So I think Subrina and I are kind of used to that. We're from Memphis. We opened our first restaurant. It was 1,200 square feet. We didn't have any prep tables or drink machines or cash register. We just did what we had to do from the beginning. So for us, obviously, it's a different situation. Health is of the highest importance with everything going on right now. We've increased sanitation measures in the restaurants, which, restaurants are probably the most sanitary place you can get food from. But now we do every hour kind of spray down, wipe everything. Now you're wearing gloves for everything. Now you're wearing masks in the kitchen and everything. So we just did what we need to do, first and foremost, to kind of keep our employees safe. Secondly, to try to do what we could do to kind of put a little money in their pocket if they couldn't get the unemployment.
And I know the challenge that a lot of businesses in the restaurant have had is if you did receive the PPP and your employees are getting unemployment, how are you still able to retain your employees but still satisfy what the PPP requirements are, because there's a time limit on it. And so we've had to try to balance out to say, okay, I don't want you to lose on this side, but we have to find a way to, to make sure you're paid. And so I know that's been a challenge for a lot of our restaurant peers that we've talked to, especially with the unemployment going on to a certain amount of time. And so as we transition back into opening, hopefully our employees have seen that we care. We actually, it hasn't been just a thing for us, we're all going through it. So I think the way you treat your employees is really how they treat you. Like, we've had some great staff. We got people, we try to check on them. Chris Reeds of Piedmont Culinary Guild, she set up to where all the restaurant workers, we were able to get them bags of groceries. Like, all of our employees had bags of groceries and produce. They have dinners. So, like, I think everyone here is pulled together. The restaurant industry is competitive, but like during this time right now, none of that stuff mattered. It was just about making sure our people were fed. So we really saw a lot of camaraderie during this hard time. So I appreciate that. I haven't seen that in a lot of places in a long time. So I'm really happy about that.
So this question isn't on the script, but you guys have been partners in business, but you're partners in life. And as we've been talking about the stress that we all have had on how we've been quarantined or staying at home together, and you've got a marriage life and you've got a business life. Talk to us a little bit about how that feels to be a couple that's 24/7 together, and how does it work for you?
So we just spoke about this the other day. We actually celebrate 10 years being married this year, and we've had the restaurant for 8 of those years. So we, honestly, Greg and I have been quarantined together a long time. We have had 8 years of quarantine.
Only Greg is laughing, right?
We have had 8 years of quarantine, so it's a balance. With him having Leah and Louise, and I still run Uptown Yolk, I was like, wow, we get to actually separate, like how we were when we first got married. Sure. Like, you go to work and then I go to work. And so, yeah, I feel like it's a funny way of making us like come back together.
And that's the odd thing about the quarantine culminating with us opening a second restaurant is just that. Like, now we have, so normally it's kind of like, we got like 10 employees, so 5 of them are kind of like kitchen employees, and the other 5 are like front of the house. So we have a lot of discussions about who's at fault, all right? What's the problem back at the house, front of the house, your side or my side? Now we're having discussions about full restaurants, so now we can kind of laugh about who's doing what on one place, who's doing what on the other place. So when we come back together, we missed each other because we haven't seen each other for all day or whatever time. So oddly enough, this quarantine has kind of allowed us to see the value in what we have and what our relationship is and the good things about it, and not just, hey, you getting on my nerves. Well, okay, you getting on my nerves too. So now what we gonna do? I'm gonna go outside, you stay in here. So I mean, it's been interesting how it's allowed us to be.
It'll be a story to tell our future kids.
For sure.
I promise it will.
Well, thank you guys so much. Now, Chad's going to come forward with and talk a little bit about Ready CLT, how it originated, and how is it transitioning and moving forward. So, Chad, are you ready to come up? Ready CLT? Thanks, guys, for sharing some of your personal life.
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Mayor. Ready CLT was born out of our original effort, which was Support CLT. SupportCLT.com was a site that was created in response to all of the offerings from the SBA, the North Carolina Golden Leaf Fund, the county and the city offerings, and helping small businesses under 50 employees navigate each one of those processes. Also to give them assistance and their employees assistance in cracking the code at the unemployment office, which has been extremely difficult. And also providing them just basic support as small businesses under 50, especially minority-owned businesses, in getting access to non-traditional funding through grants that were located throughout the region or through the county and the city. We took over 6,000 calls in a 5-week period from small businesses under 50 employees, and we compiled some really great raw data that let us have eyes on the ground, basically what was going on in our small business community. And we opened that hotline thinking this is going to be something we can do to help them through applications. We can help them through navigating the tools that the city and the county and the state were giving us. And we learned that a lot of them were not prepared to reopen. And through response for that, we created Ready CLT, which is a hugely comprehensive website. ReadyCLT.com offers industry-specific best practices, and we also have a 64-page manual. And Gibbie is on the call today, and we listen to Gibbie every day, and we update our site based on what Gibbie tells us every day. You'll notice if we're in the pass or fail category for the next phase, we keep up with those metrics and timelines. But the command center is going to be located at the Charlotte Museum of History. It'll be open Monday through Friday, 9 until 5, and the hotline will be staffed. The hotline number is 704-837-4050, and these individuals will be answering calls about best practices, what we know from the city, state, county, and federal government, the CDC guidelines, the health department guidelines. Everything is industry specific. We're going to have videos that are going to be uploaded as well to assist people in how to properly clean. And also, there's another module that we're going to offer, which is going to be workshops, either on site or via Zoom, for businesses that are learning how to pass the guidelines for the PPP, like we were discussing before, and how to, we'll offer CPAs and bookkeepers on a pro bono basis in that particular workshop for you to learn how to document and what percentages are required and what's your timeline and are you doing everything properly so that loan will be forgiven by the end of the year on December the 31st. And then we're also going to be sourcing PPE for small businesses. That includes gloves, sanitizers, cleansers, equipment, and even plexiglass for point of sales and stations. So that way we can give you resources and also point you in the right direction. And it's sort of going to be a hub, and we're partnering with the Open for Business, and so we're going to provide that. Every small business that calls or comes in, we're going to get them to register for the Open for Business with the city, so that way we can assist in building that program as well, and providing data to the city, so that way as we navigate the 3 phases, the city also has the same data that we do, because it's going to be important to let them know who's looking for PPE, who's reopening, who's having issues reopening, and what those issues look like. We're collaborating with the Charlotte Small Business Coalition, which is a group of businesses that include all of the affinity minority chambers and all of the merchant associations, Black Business Owners of Charlotte, the Latin Chamber, the Black Chamber, the Asian Chamber, and we're also reaching out to the Women's Business Center and other organizations, which represents thousands of small businesses under 50 employees. We're really excited. This should be fully operational by the 15th of May. And we're looking forward to assisting Charlotte with reopening.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us just maybe the top 2 or 3 things that came out after you answered 6,000 calls?
So the top 2 or 3 things that we've seen, number one, obviously for everybody, is access to funding. What we learned is small businesses, particularly those ones under 25 employees and sole props, were having issues with accessing traditional funding because of documentation, P&Ls, Most small businesses under 25 employees balance a checkbook and pay their employees on a 2-week to 2-week basis. And they didn't have they didn't have these documents readily available. And so there was a roadblock there for them to be able to do that. And it could also be credit, and it could also be any type of collateral that may be needed. They're just not traditionally the ones that are at the front of the line for those types of services. And that it impacts women-owned and people of color in the small business community greater than any other group. The second thing that we learned was time to navigate the entire process, because the average person waited 2.5 hours to reach a live person on the SBA at first, or they just sent an email and they got a standard email back and there was no way to find out. And you really didn't know from the federal government if you'd received funding unless you got a deposit into your account, because the standard emails were very vague. And so we were helping navigate that. And then the third thing is, what do I do with my employees? And how do I help them navigate the unemployment process, because you'd have to go through adjudication if there's no COVID assistance, and the COVID assistance didn't come out until mid-April to late April. So everybody that was applying for unemployment automatically got a denial, or they were lost in the abyss of adjudication. And so we were training employers to go ahead and send a letter to the unemployment office, or to get on there into their account and let them know that they have either laid off, furloughed, or terminated these individual employees, so the employees would not have to wait through the adjudication process. Those were the top 3 things.
Thank you very much. Now, we have had questions come in from people that are viewing this Open for Business session, and I'm going to ask 2 of you. I'm going to ask Gibbie, because she was at the Emergency Operations Center since it opened. I think it's now 62 days. And then I'm also going to ask, let's see, we should ask Louise, Subrina and Greg this question. How do you maintain employee moral and positive work environments during this difficult time?
I would imagine that Greg and Subrina can speak to that more specifically than I can, but one of the things that I will mention is the work that they have done and that Chad has done to help people access the resources they need to be able to support their families and themselves. But the other important thing is for them to feel supported and feel like their employer cares about their health and protecting them. Obviously, we want them to protect the people that are coming into your businesses and making sure that people feel comfortable doing that. But if your staff aren't feeling comfortable and feeling protected, then it's going to be hard. So making sure that you're doing what you can to support your staff, which includes all of the different measures that we've been recommending, making sure that they have the ability to wash their hands frequently, to clean surfaces frequently, if necessary, wearing masks if there's no options for social distancing. All of those sorts of things are critical.
But Gibbie, you've got a big team on yours. You're the director of the Public and Environmental Health Department. What did you do for your own employees?
Well, many of them are working from home. The county did an incredible job of helping us set our staff up so they could continue to provide services from home. We've limited what we provided face-to-face, but there are some public health services that we have to provide face-to-face, and some of those are clinical services. So we've made sure that staff have the protective equipment that they need, that we've set up policies and procedures to support them in that, and continue to listen to their concerns and address those if at all possible. And we're continuing that as we move through the different phases.
Okay. Subrina and Greg, what about your employee morale and work environment?
So I know for us at Uptown Yolk, we usually keep it's less than 10 people on the whole staff. So when we've been navigating this process, usually when we're doing charity breakfast, excluding even us not being there some mornings, no more than 3 people. You make sure they have their supplies they need. Fortunately for the restaurant industry, we always you always have to have these hand sink requirements. You always have to have sanitation buckets around that have to be changed every couple hours. So the practice that we already have to use, you just have to do it in hyper now. the market, 7th Street Public Market, is doing their side as far as social distancing. They're already marking certain places in the market. We won't be at full capacity anymore. The contact on servicing people over the counter is going to be a little bit different. So we have been keeping the morale up just by always checking on them, giving them hours, trying to keep money in their pocket. Because just to be frank, people, and morale is down when you're broke. So, I mean, a lot down. You're already quarantined and then you don't have money. So you want to make sure people are able to pay their bills. People have children. So you want to make sure you're checking on them and saying, hey, y'all doing okay? Did you get approved for unemployment? So we have those conversations with our staff. Because we've always been open door policy on things, but we just went more into hyperdrive with that, now because everybody's going through their own thing, and I think they appreciate that because we have retained everyone. So people that haven't been back, they asked, "Hey, we good to go when we open?" And we told them yes. So
yeah, we're in a very fortunate position because we've always been employee first. And of course, we run a business and we want to be profitable, but it's very important for our employees to be in a space where they're not only happy, where they feel like they're able to do the job that they're hired for. So we try to use all those tools that we have for that. And like Leah, Louise, some of my employees got unemployment, and I have to make them stay at home. They love the space, they love the environment. I have to say, listen, y'all can't come in because there was no way to really navigate this. So we do a lot of texting and talking through. Just talking about recipe ideas, menu ideas. Tomato season is coming, so we kind of had that constant conversation going to where we're just kind of trying to be creative as much as we can. And aside from that, like they were saying earlier, Chris Reed and the PCG, working with Cisco, working with U.S. Foods, working with some of these broadliners, and we've been able to actually donate, whether it's produce boxes or actual baked ziti, I think from Lincoln Street once, just trying to make sure that we can give them as much as we can give them through some of the avenues that we have and the connections that we have. Even like our first week, people we was like, listen, if y'all need some to take home, come get it from the restaurant.
So like eggs, bread, all that.
All the essentials, right? Thank you.
Like, look, make as much French toast as you want to make.
Thank you. All right. Fred, this question is for you. How can I find the best practices and resources that the CELC has put together? How can they find out about the work that you're doing and the results?
I'd say that the best resource, I'd say, across our 16-county region would probably be through the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. Janet Labar and her team, we shared the survey information with them that could be easily disseminated throughout the community. I will certainly reach out to her and tell her to anticipate some of our business leaders reaching out to her to try and seek that information. But I'd say that's probably the best resource, at least broadly across not only our city, but the 16-county region that makes up the Alliance.
Okay, thank you. Chad, sure. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and they're all pretty related, about Ready CLT. What resources or guides on reopening are you planning? Do you also have mentoring opportunities? And what industries do you really focus on to establish best practices? Chad? And
sure.
If you want me to, I can do it in shortly. So, all right, what types of resources or guides are you preparing?
Sure. So we do currently have an exhaustive manual that's in a PDF form on the website, and it's called the Framework for Reopening. This particular form is 64 pages and covers about 28 different industries. It also has websites for resources and downloads. That particular form is for anybody to download, print off. It's accessible, it's free. Also, we're focusing heavily on restaurants and eateries throughout the city. We're focusing on close contact businesses like massage, barbershop, salons, nail salons, things of that nature. And then the third thing is going to be large gathering spots, which are going to be amusement, sports, Carowinds, churches, mosques, synagogues, all of those locations where you're going to have multiple people sitting in the same space, theaters. One thing that we do plan on offering is we're planning on getting industry-specific individuals to also sit side by side with some individuals from Novant and Atrium and answer some questions directly deal with that particular industry, and then also offer free workshops for individuals that either want to come into the command center or log into the Zoom on a daily basis and get more information on everything from sanitizers to how to engage your local health department. If you're up for inspection, what things may have changed with the Department of Health and Human Services, what requirements may have changed, what's the proper way to utilize gloves, how to wear a mask, do you change the policies of your business, where can you get the social distancing tape for your point of sale, things like that. And what was the third one, Mayor? I'm sorry.
The third one was, are you going to have mentoring opportunities?
So we don't need to reinvent the wheel on that, and so we're proud of what Open for Business is doing in the city, and I think building more on this mentoring program that we're doing right now and helping businesses to connect through that. Obviously, each one of the organizations that we represent, the Charlotte Small Business Coalition, have mentoring programs, the Women's Center, the Alliance, and other organizations throughout the city. And I think what we do is connect people with programs that currently exist.
Okay.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, please.
One point.
Yes, please, Fred.
I really want to applaud Chad and his team for all the work that they've already done. What I would say is, his organization is probably even a better resource for small businesses to look to as opposed to the Alliance. Because of the type business we're in, mass gatherings at the arena, we're still in the infancy stage of gathering information and putting our best practices and protocols in place, as are a lot of companies that won't be rushing back out and have their employees come out. But it sounds like Chad and his team have put together some phenomenal resources that businesses can lean on today and be able to rely on as best practices and protocols. And I would highly recommend that businesses look to Chad and his group for some guidance, even as early as today, because it sounds like they've done phenomenal work in planning and have some great information to be able to share within our community.
So, Fred, don't go anywhere. Commissioner Silver has appointed you to a committee focused on reopening the NBA. We love our Hornets. Yeah, I want you to know they've written that in big letters. We love our Hornets, and fans can't wait to see them again. What can you tell us about your work with reopening the NBA, and how you, as the team leader, the president of the team, how have you pivoted your strategy to do this?
Great question, Mayor, and thank you for your unwavering support of our organization. We really appreciate that in our community as well. But it starts with our owner, Michael Jordan, who represents us on the Board of Governors and is on weekly calls with our commissioner and the other 29 owners, really looking at ways we can safely get back into a basketball playing environment and hopefully finish this season and go into a playoff series. And clearly we're looking forward to the future. But what we've done as an organization, and we're extremely lucky to have James Jordan as our Chief Operating Officer. He's a 31-year storied military hero that has a lot of experience in protocol and procedures, and actually put together a task force internally with all of our department heads, even prior to us being displaced from our arena and our offices. And because of that, we've been able to have weekly task force meetings with that group, also encouraging our department heads to meet daily and weekly with their departments, and then also have an all-staff meeting each week as we start to put together our strategies and making those fun and really focus on making sure our employees know their first, like Greg and Subrina have done a great job with their employees. But we have a lot of things to look at when we think about going back into the Spectrum Center, into our offices, thinking about people wearing masks and us providing them what our office configuration will look like from a social distancing standpoint, temperature testing, whether we'll have our staff meetings in conference rooms or stay on Zoom, even if all of us are still in the arena, what our cleaning procedures need to look like, what our restrooms need to look like with no-touch facilities within the restrooms. And then when you think about bringing our basketball team back in the arena, how can we bring them safely back in with the protocols that the NBA is setting up and our partner Novana is helping us set up to make sure they can come back in the arena and be in a safe, clean environment to be able to practice and train in and prepare to play. So we've got a myriad of things that are on our plate, but again, I'm confident that under James Jordan's leadership with our task force and our work closely with the NBA and the other 29 teams, that we'll hopefully put together the right protocols and procedures that'll keep everybody safe as we slowly work our way back into our working environment.
Okay, thank you. Gibbie, I've got a lot of questions that I'm going to ask you to just give us a rapid-fire answer to. There are a number that are directed specifically at you, and so I'm just, some of them may be yes and no, and some may take a little bit more. So the first one is, will there be a uniform plan by the county for businesses to open safely, or will it be up to the businesses to decide how employees and customers are safe? Gibbie?
Actually, the manager has had several telephone calls with businesses in the community around this, and actually put out a toolkit this morning that we can make available to people that has some detail in it around recommendations, as well as some signage that can be used. So we will get that out broadly. It will be on our county website today.
And we will put it on our Open for Business website. And Chad, I'm sure Charlotte Ready Charlotte CLT. All right, the next one. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It's actually Dina sent it over.
Okay.
And it's up on the support, it's up on the Ready CLT site already, and Dina sent it out to all the different business leaders this morning.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, Gibbie, will there be a mandatory mask issue ordered?
We are not issuing mandatory masks. We are recommending it, especially for folks who have trouble social distancing. So at this point, there's no mandatory at the state level, and we're not planning on one here.
Okay. We were asked whether or not the owner of the establishment, whatever building, retail, restaurant, could they require their customers to wear masks or their clients to wear masks?
They can require it. They can recommend it. It's entirely up to the business.
Okay. Gibbie, will there be some sort of inspection or certificate of safety that can reassure customers that a business is safe?
Well, not for businesses in general. We have no jurisdiction over businesses. We will continue to work with our restaurants as they start opening back up to make sure that they are meeting the requirements, and that we'll help them any way we can with implementing the protections that we've been talking about.
Okay. And just your assessment, how are we doing, how are the people of Charlotte doing on social distancing?
Well, we have done fairly well. What we are seeing at the moment is that, and a lot of our social distancing is determined by how many cars are on the road. We are seeing that our social distancing is slipping some. Since this past weekend, we sort of expected that, and I would imagine we'll see more people out as time goes on, but we're keeping a close eye on that. And anecdotally, what we did hear is that there were quite a few people out this weekend who were not necessarily social distancing and were not wearing masks. So we want to encourage people to continue to think about that we're still in a stay-at-home order, and we are encouraging masks, especially if you cannot social distance. So those things haven't changed any. I know it feels freer because we've opened some retail, but people still need to be part of the solution in this county.
All right, the two final fast answers, Gibbie. Are there special precautions I should take with my children when I take them out to retail spaces or restaurants as we reopen?
Again, social distancing is critical. I mean, other than washing your hands and covering your cough and the personal things you can do, social distancing is critical. And if you're in an environment where you can't, children should be wearing masks just like adults should.
Okay. And the final rapid-fire question for our Gibbie Harris. Has anyone started conversations about how the business community will be affected if there is a second wave this fall or winter for the virus?
We are having conversations about what that might look like, but a lot is going to depend on the data and the epidemiology of what's happening in this community, and we're watching that very closely.
All right, thanks, Gibbie, for doing those really fast and helping everybody understand. So now, coming back to Chad, how can a small business PPE provider get connected with Ready CLT?
Okay, if you go to the readyclt.com, there's an email at the bottom of the page. You can email us there with your company information and what you're providing. First exceptions for, we're placing businesses that are in the Charlotte region on the site first, because we want those businesses to receive calls from our businesses about PPE, but we will be including an exhaustive amount of information surrounding masks, point of sale, plexiglass, gloves, cleaning supplies, and sanitizer.
I think they wanted to get their product on the site, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
All they need to do is email us from the email at the very bottom of the website page.
Okay, great. All right, Fred, what have you learned from large organizations for protecting and keeping your employees safe that can be replicated for small businesses?
Well, I think the main thing that I think we all are learning is just how large organizations are putting their people and their safety first. And I think that is the one thing that every organization should be focused on, health first and safety first. And then the other thing is, how all of our organizations can get involved in the community and help those in need. And we've seen many large organizations find a way to give back. And we've seen, smaller businesses like Greg and Subrina's find a way to give back and help their employees be able to get through this. But this is one of those things that it really doesn't matter what size company you have. We all have to pull together in this community and learn what we can from each other and listen to our health professionals like Gibbie that are giving us guidance into how to get our businesses back up and running while we also stay safe and healthy. So it's one of these exercises that I've never seen anything like. The camaraderie, the partnership, the coordination, it really crosses across every line that you can think about on how we work together within our community to bring our community back. And it takes great leadership. And again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we've got unbelievable leadership in this community. And I think having webinars like this to have our community be able to listen in is very helpful for our citizens. And again, thank you for leading this, Mayor.
Okay. Greg and Subrina, you've got a big compliment here. Your social media is incredible. Do you have any tips for others about how to market their business on social media?
So first and foremost, we have a PR person that we work with, Rachel Sutherland. They do a lot of our posting. But outside of that, they do a lot of our posting. Peter Taylor does Order Fire, and he did a lot of the pictures on social media.
And Jonathan Cooper.
And Jonathan Cooper does some of our pictures as well. I think what we try to do in business, on social media, in person, on webinars, is be our authentic selves. Like, we don't really, I think when you try to do something or ascribe to an ideal that's not from your core, from your center, you're going to struggle with, making things look good on social media because it's not you. You're trying to do something for somebody else or some other ideas. Like, we try to be ourselves, and we try to work with, great people. Rachel kind of tells us, hey, you should promote this, you should promote that. But we promote what we think is authentic and what's real, and we try to be honest to ourselves.
And that can be done, it can be done authentically, but you can also be strategic. I know we hadn't touched on that, but I did the Amp Up Charlotte program.
That was one of our questions next, Subrina. So talk about it. Talk about being a graduate of Amp Up.
They taught us, I cannot give that program enough praises. Nikita and Jerry Ann, as far as their program goes, it taught us so much. We were in the middle of transitioning from our Rock Hill location coming to Charlotte while I'm in the program. We hadn't even opened Leah and Louise. Leah and Louise really hadn't even been thought of. Like, we learned ways to actually apply. It's one thing to be in business and not be able to apply something, but this was specific to what I was doing. It didn't matter which field you were in. We had people in there that was in construction, and me and that person were able to collaborate on ideas on how to grow our business. So that was, I tell people all the time, if you can get in that program and dedicate the 7 months to it, it's amazing. I keep in touch with my instructor. I keep in touch with Jerry Ann. That program is actually a hands-on. It's hands-on, it's tangible. I can actually see the results of my work from that program. So I tell people that sometimes there's programs where you can't see and you like, I wasted my time. That was an amazing program. I tell anybody to do that.
So the city's AMP Up program helps minority small business owners grow their business, and we certainly have seen the results of what you've been doing, so we really appreciate that. And that AMP Up program you can access again on Open for Business CLT if you'd like to learn more about that. So we are at almost at the end of our time here, and I've tried to answer as many of the questions that have been sent in. But one of the very first things that I wanted to say is that listening to the panelists, you hear them talking about this environment with the expertise and language that none of us had. Virus, COVID-19, essentials, sanitizing, all of those things. So I want Gibbie to really understand that all of that time spent before the camera every morning, you have taught this community how to understand what we're going through, so we owe you a great appreciation. Fred, for what you're doing and at the state level, local level, helping us get our large businesses to understand what it means for our hospitality industry makes a huge difference. And I tell you, Chad, you had a vision and you're working it, and it's helping people. People are very interested in what you're doing. So today, I just want to say to every one of you, thank you for the depth of understanding. What I've heard from you, if you put your employees first and your authentic self and your know who you are, then others will know what you're doing as a result of that. So this is the end of today's series. I want to thank you all for being here. It's great to share this time with you. We hope that these webinars will help small businesses, will help our entire business community as we see the changing climate. I always like to talk about this at the beginning when we started out in early March, that sometimes a decision didn't last an hour. Before you had to rethink it and pivot and all of the new words that we're using. And seriously, the city appreciates the opportunity to be a part of the pivoting of this business community. This series will continue every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and we'll be back next week again to talk about best practices on reopening. I want to thank everyone that emailed a question in. Again, to the panelists, can't say appreciate you enough, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank y'all for having us. Thank you, Mayor Lyles. We appreciate it. It's so nice to meet you.
I know. It's so nice to meet you. My brothers talk about you all the time. They love your Rock Hill location.
Well, tell